Good afternoon. Today we are starting our next unit. We finished up that last unit before Christmas break. Now we're starting our next unit. We do have the math testing coming up next week, Tuesday. So we're going to see the end of this week with the reading math testing, and we have a speaker on Friday. We might have shorter math times. We'll see what we can get through. I don't know if it's gonna mess up what I think we're gonna get done. We'll see. We are starting with Po34. I can use direct proportions in real context. Proportions are a big part on the math test, so we really want to make sure we understand proportions. This is a PO, so this is an important objective for us today. So there are three different types of proportions. We're learning the first one today, direct. Then we'll have partitive and inverse. So some of us, when we do the direct proportions, it's oh, I know how to do this. This is what we've been doing. That's why it's a PO. We've had an idea. It's going to be a little bit easier for us. But then we're going to get into words that we don't know. Partitive, inverse, it's going to get newer, right? So we're starting with something that we're going to kind of have a better understanding on, and then as the weeks go on, it's going to get a little bit more new things for us. So direct proportions and partitive proportions will seem familiar. So even though we don't know the word partitive, as we go through it and I explain it, once it's explained, it'll be a whole lot easier. But then something like inverse proportions is going to be new for us. So what is a direct proportion? A direct proportion, oh my goodness. There we go. Direct proportion is the relation between quantities whose ratio is constant. So we learned about those ratios. Now we're going to look at it with the eye of proportions. But if we understood the ratios and we felt comfortable and confident with ratios, proportions is going to come easier for us. This objective will require concepts from past lessons, including unit rates and proportions. So we're going to answer each question and show our work. So this is a big one. We want to remember that we are showing our work. Sometimes we look at something and we try to do it in our head. We put it into the calculator. We have to write out what it is we're doing, what the calculations are. You don't have to do long division, long multiplication. Put down what your calculations you are doing. That's showing your work, seeing how you got to that answer. So let's look at this first one to see what it all means. I'm going to scroll up a little bit so I have some more work from. So a car travels 300 miles in 6 hours. So how many miles can the car travel in 8 hours? How many feet does the car travel in 8 hours? How many miles is the car traveling per hour? How many feet is the car traveling per second? So let's think through. I know before Christmas break was so long ago, but we're going to brush the cobwebs off and see if we can remember how we should find these things. First thing I always do is I always put it, I'll take this, car travels 300 miles in 6 hours. So 300 miles every 6 hours. So I'll write it out so I know what it is that I'm working with. So now I want to know how many miles can the car travel in 8 hours. Does anybody have a guess on what steps we should do to get there? What do you think, Beckett?
Divide down.
Divide down to what?
2.
Why down to 2?
Because you could go up to up to 8 and 2.
Okay.
And 10 plus 6 is 6.
I like how you're using your number sets. That will get you there. The way that I do it was, remember when it said on top, you need to use your knowledge of unit rates and proportions? So what Beckett was doing, he was dividing down into a way that he could multiply up. I always go down to the unit rate, which means you put a 1 as your denominator, and then you can multiply up. It's doing the same idea. We just use different numbers to divide down to. So Beckett knew, oh, 300 can be divided by 2, 6 can be divided by 2, or divided by 3, 6 can be divided by 3, and then I multiply it up. So either way will get us there. So if we do it Beckett's way, 300 miles for every 6 hours. If I divide by 3, I would get 100 miles every 2 hours. And then I need to go up to that 8 hours. So I'm going to multiply by 4. So it would be 400 miles in 8 hours. The way that I do it, because it doesn't always work out so easy with that, oh, I can divide the top and the bottom by 3 and then I can multiply up. Use the unit rate. So I would divide 300 by 6. So that would give me 50 miles every hour. And then I multiply that by the 8, and I get 400 miles in 8 hours. So again, it's the same concept. My way, we can always find a unit rate. You can't always find something that you can divide down and then multiply up to. It doesn't always work that easy. So that's why I always stick with the unit rate. But if you have good number sense and you know, oh, I can do it this way, it's totally fine. Because we get the same answer. Yes. So as long as we're getting the same answer, it doesn't matter which way we went to get to it. Because it's doing the same kind of math. Does that make sense? So for A, we would put, how many miles can the car travel? 400 miles. So then B says, how many feet does the car travel in 8 hours? How about solving that? What do you think, Claire? Does anybody remember how many feet are in 1 mile? Addie? Or Eleanor?
5,200.
Yeah, if we look back to that previous objective, that says we're going to be using concepts from previous objectives, you can look back at it. It's 5,280 feet in a mile. So knowing that, how are we going to find how many feet are in 8 hours? Eleanor?
Well, there's 400 miles per hour and
We know that there's 400 miles in 8 hours. Times it by the 5,280. And what do we get for an answer? Hadley? 2,112,000 feet. Whew. Notice how my final answer, I am putting my label on it, right? I'm using that workspace down below to show my work. If I run out of room in that workspace, what can I do? I don't want to erase work to do more work, because I want to show my work for each problem. What can I do? Eleanor?
you can write the work on this.
Yeah, you can look at that blank page right next to it. You could do work on it. What else could I do? David?
You can also look at the margins.
You could work in the margins, but sometimes it gets all squishy there. What else, Harper? Yeah, I could grab a piece of loose leaf paper from up front that's already got the holes punched in it. You could do work on the loose leaf paper and you could put it into your binder so you're showing your work. But we have to have work shown for each of these. You can't just say, well, I know it's 5,280 feet, I'm gonna times it by 400, and I'm just gonna write my answer down. You have to show what calculation that you're doing in your calculator to show your work. So make sure you're just writing out what your calculation is. That makes sense? All right, C. How many miles is the car traveling per hour? Well, we should all have our hands up because I worked us through our unit rate. So I showed my work right here. So that work was showing how many miles is it traveling per hour, Vivi? 50 miles per hour. I already showed that work. I don't have to show it again. I'm just using work that I did to answer a previous question to answer that one. So if I had done it Beckett's way, it wouldn't be showing, so I would have to work it out again. Okay. And D, how many feet is the car traveling per second? How do you think I solved that part of it? Thinking through some of these different steps that we were doing, how can I figure out how many feet per second? I see a couple hands up. I'm giving us all a chance to think. What steps do I have to go through to get to the seconds? Think about what information I do know. So what information about feet do I know? Natalie?
There is that number in
2,112,000 feet
in the photo.
in how many hours?
8.
In 8 hours. Well, I need to go from hours to what? Seconds. So how do I go from those 8 hours to seconds? What do you think, Harper?
6 times 8. Or 60.
Well, there are 60 seconds in 1 hour, but what do I have here? So what do I have to do in order to convert that to seconds? If I need to go from 8 hours, I can't go directly to seconds. What do I have to go down to? 6 hours.
1 hour.
1 hour, okay, because I know how many seconds are in 1 hour. So I can go from 8 hours down to 1 hour. What do I do to do that? What math should I do? Divide by 8. So I want to get it down to 1 hour so then I can keep going down to my seconds. So what's 2,112,000 divided by 8? There? $264,000 feet in 1 hour. What should I do next? Eleanor? I'm going to divide it by 60, so now I get down to 1 minute. What's 264,000 divided by 60? David?
4,400.
So now I'm at 4,400 feet in 1 minute. How do I go from there down to 1 second? Natalie?
Divide by 60.
Divide by 60 again, and what do I get from that? No, I'm sorry, I thought you were just gonna tell me.
73.3.
I'm gonna put a repeating sign above it, because that 3 keeps on going. You could round it to 3, you could just put 3. So, if I know the car's going 73, there's 73.3 feet per second. My question is how many feet is the car traveling per second? I can answer it now, right? I just had to work my way down to it. So it's going 73.3 feet per second. So it seems really complicated. We're going, oh my goodness, how do I answer this? But when we stop and think about the math that we've already learned, we're just doing math from before. And we're answering the questions using different things that we've already done. We've converted from hours to seconds before, right? We're just doing that same thing. Okay, we've done proportions before. We've done unit rates. So we're taking the math that we learned before Christmas, and now we're using that all kind of mixed up, trying to decide which math do I have to do to answer each question. Do we have questions on this at all? Is it kind of making sense now that we're walked through one of them? So the one at the bottom of the page, we are working with that grape juice. Let me try to erase this, there we go. So we've got the grape juice, we need to answer our A, B, and C questions. Paying attention if there's multiple questions. Look at that C. How many jugs can you buy? And how much money will you have left over? So you have to make sure you're fully answering the questions. We will have questions like this on the test. Make sure that you're answering each question. Our second page, we have an A and a B, making sure you're answering all of those questions. We've got A, B, C, and then we've got A, B, C, D, and then a review. So we know the steps that we have to do. We've already done this. We're not learning any new math on this. We're just taking what we've learned before and we're applying it to this objective. Any questions on today's assignment? All right, so we know that we did not have Khan Academy assigned before Christmas break because I am not evil making you do Khan over Christmas. So we don't have Khan to do this week. So if you finish this in today's work time, you can work on your math packet. You can work on practice work that you want to do from that test that we just took. You can work on, if you've got all of that done, I've had one person so far get all of their math packet done. Yeah, but everybody else still has stuff to work on. It's not due until the 21st. You have things to work on. This is a quiet work time now. If you have questions, you can come up and ask me. Okay, so let's quietly get to work. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.